first I would hire an attorney that is a FCC attorney, and there's many of them in Washington. We use a company called Dow Lonis as our FCC counsel. There's Latham and Watkins. There's Fleischman and Walsh. But clearly you need FCC counsel, and then there's several forms that the FCC requires in terms of applications for approval that you have to file. And it's a government-regulated business. The radio station frequencies are government-regulated, so there's only an allocated amount of stations and frequencies in a given market, and your signal contours are also somewhat regulated. That's why you don't have one station in LA getting all the way up to San Francisco, because in between there's mid-sized markets, and we have our own signals with our own contours that are kind of regulated by the government. AM and FM stations are all regulated by the government, and the contours, which means really the signal pattern and power, are really mandated by the FCC. And the reason for that is if you have a signal in Bakersfield, California, which is pretty much flat terrain, there's no mountains around, and then about 40 miles north of that you might have Tulare, Visalia, Hanford, where we're an operator in. If the contour wasn't regulated, that signal in Bakersfield would get into our market. And so they want the signals to really serve the community of license. I mean, that's really the way that the FCC, or at least my interpretation of the FCC is. So all your FM frequencies and AM frequencies have a city of license that they have to serve with their coverage. The FCC does limit the power and bleed in from another market, or else you would have a lot of interference, which on some stations you do, depending on power. An interesting situation on which might surprise the audience here is we have an AM stick in San Francisco, and we have a daytime power, and we also have a nighttime power. So AMs are actually regulated day power and night power. And it's called kilowatts. So we have a 5,000 kilowatt station daytime power, but we are regulated at night where we have to reduce power. And the reason is there's a station on the same frequency, 1510, in Spokane, Washington. That's a 50,000 watt nighttime signal. So believe it or not, we in San Francisco reduce power because of a station in San Francisco on the same frequency. So that just shows you how far these signals can really travel if not regulated. And so that's the reason we have to reduce power. Are there fees that a radio broadcaster pays to the FCC? The answer is yes. There's license fees, and there's also a lot of other requirements that the FCC requires of a broadcaster. We have to comply with EEO requirements, which is when we recruit employees, we have to post the position out to the public so that there's no discrimination. We have to keep a public file of which basically has our broadcast license, our frequency, many other things in the broadcast file. Letters of complaint from the public, which is open to the public. So there are certain things that we have to do with the FCC in terms of the public files. And then we also have to make sure we're in compliance in terms of, like I said, from a signal standpoint, but there's also radiation and other issues as well involved. So there's a lot involved in being a broadcaster besides just playing the music and sales. There are, the government requires that you really have a fiduciary responsibility. Most importantly, the government really wants you to be a service to the community in case there is a disaster in the community. And so that's one of our primary responsibilities as a broadcaster, is in the event of an emergency that we're able to basically inform the community of what to do. And so there's EAS alert and tests that are required that you have to conduct as being a broadcaster. So that's kind of a little bit behind the curtain of on the FCC with radio.